We want to point out Steve Millington joining us in studio this morning. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. It's a big political day for his opposition, that is the Democrats statewide, having their presidential caucus today. Bernie Sanders in Idaho Falls late last week, in Boise yesterday, drawing big crowds. Hillary Clinton somewhere in Utah, I believe, at this point. But we'll be talking a little bit about that coming up in just a moment. I do want to point out, if you listen to this show on a regular basis, we recommend you get your hearing checked because you'll want to hear it again day after day after day. And we'd like you to give a call or check out online MountHarrisonAudiology.com. That's the home of Dr. Christine Pickup, a doctor of audiology. At Mount Harrison Audiology, they can do a free screening of your hearing. She's at 1218 9th Street, Unit Number 2 in Rupert, 312-0957. She'd like to ask you if you're on medication for high blood pressure or maybe a diuretic. Medications can affect your hearing. Hearing health is a reflection of your overall health. When you come in for a free wellness hearing screening at Mount Harrison Audiology, Dr. Pickup will review your medications and also discuss ways to protect your hearing in the future. Just a quick note, Steve, our soundproofing here in the studio is going to be a little odd today. That's because I've been breaking things left and right by accident around the building this week, and so one of the soundproofing panels is dangling by just a thread behind me.
I thought it was more like a nail or a screw, but maybe a thread is the appropriate term.
Turned out it was glued up there. It wasn't.
Oh, really? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So it is hanging by a thread.
You breathe on it, it'll fall down.
Elmer's glue thread.
Hey, quick note. Tonight, I guess they get together at CSI on the local level.
That's correct.
And that's the meeting place for Democrats in Twin Falls County.
Yeah, at the Fine Arts Center.
Big space.
Big space. I think they're expecting, and in fact, most of the state of Idaho is seeing larger than previously expected interest in the caucus tonight. And many of the counties have had to go to a multiple location, or they're moving to a much larger venue. And even some of the smaller counties are moving to a larger venue situation, which scares me as a Republican. But it's interesting that we don't want too many Democrats in the state. But it's interesting that we're seeing so much interest. And I look at it and I say to myself, whoa, when we had the Republican primary 2 weeks ago, 222,000 votes cast.
74% of Republicans turned out.
A huge number. I mean, it just blew the socks off. We're seeing the same kind of interest on the Democrat side, apparently, by the number of people who are wanting to be there. Could it be that we have got such angst amongst the voting public that everybody wants to be involved this year as opposed to previous years when they just kind of said, ho-hum?
Well, you know what it is? I think the Democrats are even upset with their current president, Barack Obama, because this is a Democrat speaking yesterday in Spokane. Take a listen to this. This Democrat is saying that it's also that Mr. Obama is part of the problem.
If you don't believe we can all grow together again, if you don't believe we're ever going to grow again, if you believe it's more important to relitigate the past, there may be many reasons that you don't want to support it. But if you believe we can all rise together, if you believe we've finally come to the point where we can put the awful legacy of the last 8 years behind us and the 7 years before that, when we...
I'm going to cut that off.
Wow.
Did you just hear what he said?
Yeah. That legacy of the past 7 years.
The awful legacy.
Yeah, that's right. Let's put that correct adjective in there. Awful legacy.
They do not like Mr. Obama.
I don't think there's any love lost between Obama and the Clintons. That's pretty obvious. But you see that the media people just want to hammer the Republicans for their vitriol and their disgust and beating each other. And now we have former President Bill Clinton, whose wife Hillary is running for president, and he makes that kind of a statement, and it was about 4 pages deep, even on the Drudge Report.
Yeah.
So, we're just not getting a fair shake here, ladies and gentlemen. That's what it boils down to. But it will be real interesting to see the total turnout in Idaho for this caucus event today.
I have a feeling that Bernie Sanders, he may not win, but I think he's going to do well.
I think he's going to scare the mainstream, the establishment Democrats, so to speak, because of the interest and voter turnout that he's generating.
And at least he's been paying some attention to Democrats in the state with those two visits in the last several
Right.
days.
He has, and he's got to stem somehow. He's got to shut down Hillary Clinton's march to the nomination, and give the guy credit. Holy Moses, he is not afraid to go anywhere and talk to anybody, and that's kind of what you have to do.
I understand James Comey may be the guy who actually shuts down her march to the nomination because he's going to turn over the evidence, and then there may be an indictment, and then they'll nominate either John Kerry or Elizabeth Warren or
How about Joe Biden?
Joe Biden. Yeah, an East Coast liberal will be the nominee, and then Bernie who?
Yeah, that's right.
And then they can annoy the tens of thousands and millions who voted for him.
That's right. It's going to be an interesting day to see what happens.
We've got more coming up. Steve Millington, chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party, joining me, Bill Colley, in studio this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 36 at 8:30. Steve Millington, very calm this morning, joining us in studio on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're having a discussion about Social Security. That may be for another day.
I think we better do that another day, Bill.
But it is a good one. Hey, just a quick note. I just wanted to pass this along. I got this message from a friend. Coming up Thursday night, there's going to be a meeting, and that's going to be taking place in room 115 at the Shields building.
CSI campus.
CSI campus. And the writer points out they will have a guest speaker. Her name is Karen Schumacher. And she's speaking at 6:30. This is Thursday night, March 31st, Shields Building, room 115. So if you don't have to go to church that night, some people will be, but room 115, get this. And there's an actual link here, a story attached, that the latest move now is to send the Syrian refugees to the Navajo and Standing Rock Indian reservations. Well, we've crapped over those people for the last couple of hundred years. Why not keep doing it? It's 8:35. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And we have a lot going on today on the national level, not only here in Idaho with the Democrats, but I think Ted Cruz is an easy winner in Utah.
Apparently, two polls that I checked this morning, in a poll that was taken on March 16th, which would not have included the suspension of campaign by Marco Rubio. Cruz was at 42%, but Rubio had 17% in that same poll. So a later poll conducted by Y2 Associates, I think it's called, Y2 something, shows Cruz at 53%. And not all of the Rubio people switched to Cruz. Some of them actually switched to Trump, and a few of them to Kasich. Now, in Utah, here's the kick. Number one, you have to have a minimum of 15% of the vote to get any of the delegates. Okay. Number two, if you get 50% or more of the vote of the caucus delegate voters, if you get 50% or more, it's a winner-take-all state. So on this latest poll by it's Y2 Associates, I think, or Cruz is at 53%, and Rubio was no longer included in the formula, but Trump had moved up quite a long ways. However, Kasich was basically static; he didn't hardly move at all. So the absence of Rubio put 10 or so percentage points onto Cruz and about 7 or 8 percentage points onto Trump. Now, it'll be interesting to see if people change their minds given the events in Belgium over the last 8 or 10 hours.
Trump's strength.
That's one of Trump's big points. So Cruz could not only win Utah, but do it with 50%, which would give him 100% of the delegates, and there's 40 Utah delegates in Utah. Now, in Arizona, Trump was ahead by 13 percentage points in polls that were conducted Saturday and Sunday. So he's a long ways ahead of Cruz in Arizona. And this Muslim attack in Belgium is going to propel Trump some more.
Because it's a border security issue, too.
Because it's a security issue. He's been saying, Trump has been saying all along, we have got to be more vigilant and more determined in controlling these borders. And this morning's headlines, if something like that happened in the United States, I would seal the borders immediately until we could figure out what is going on.
He spoke at the APEC meeting last night, and we may be able to hear a little bit of that. But even Cal Thomas, I saw this on Facebook when I got up this morning. Cal Thomas said Trump, and Thomas is not a fan, but he said Trump sounded presidential at that event.
Wow.
We have a telephone caller with us at 8:38. Caller, you're on the air with Steve Millington and Bill Colley on Top Story. Good morning.
Hey, Steve, you said that there's a lot of Democrats because they don't like what Obama did. You know what really is? 4 more years and Idaho will be Democrat. I guarantee you that.
What are you going to do, kill off all the Republicans?
All these young people. Look who they are. They're nothing but young people. And the Republican Party are old people. So, I mean, it's just time before they kick the bucket, and here comes the Democrats.
You know,
boy, they better have a lot of kids.
Yeah, that's not too outlandish an idea. I looked at the.
But the young people all move away from here.
Well, we don't have enough economic activity to keep them all in state, and so many of them do leave. We're getting better at that. We're one of the leading job creators in the nation, and so there's more opportunities.
Job creation coming from a Republican government, basically saying hands off on a lot of regulation.
Yeah, let's get these people or get these businesses in here. It's an interesting observation on his part. I watched the news clips on television last night of Bernie Sanders at the Taco Bell Arena in Boise. Mm-hmm. And granted, you do not get a real good, solid review of everything and everybody in the room. But as it panned around, all you could see was younger generation.
Well, like the caller, a lot of the younger people want free stuff, and Bernie promises
and
it.
he promised it all to them over in Boise last night. Just gave away the whole store.
Utopia, but somebody's going to pay for it.
That's right.
20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. Steve Millington is the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party, joining us in studio until 9 o'clock this morning with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. It's 36. Our guest in the studio until 9 o'clock this morning, in fact, Steve Millington from the Twin Falls County Republican Party. I know people are trying to reach Steve this morning. And the number is 736-0300. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX, NewsRadio1310.com. I know that you may not think it, but spring will be here soon. And we've been telling you that if you'd like to be outside and still enjoy, though, that outside, that what you see when you're outdoors, I guess is what we're talking about, with a great view, but you don't want all the insects and all of the dust and the sand that's blowing around, think about putting up a sunroom. You could do it over an existing deck or even an existing patio if you call Dream Room Design, or better yet, go to the website, dreamroomdesign.com, and you can see some of the videos of how they do this, and you can actually take a look at some of the testimonials, too, that people have who are very, very pleased with what they've done. And what you can do is you can check that out. Bill Conant, the owner, he's been doing this since 2000. And as we said earlier, completely customize this. They can put in a glass roof or a hybrid roof or a metal roof. You can have windows that open and close, or you can just completely seal it off. It's great in wintertime, too, because you can sit out in the elements but still stay warm. So dreamroomdesign.com, check that out. Coming up at 8:45, it's 37. Steve Millington is in the studio with us. And, Steve, we have some callers looking to reach you this morning. You've struck a nerve in a few places.
Okay, evidently I do that, don't I?
You're up next, and you're on the air.
Good morning, guys. I wish the GOP would do some TV ads bringing up the Clinton's relationship with Charlie Tree and John Wang, an ad regarding Clinton letting Laurel build weather missiles in China, and finally an ad showing the terrorist Clinton administration slaughter and horrible deaths of little children and others at Waco.
Oh, the Waco thing just...
Yeah, it doesn't go away, does it?
I'd like to think that somebody someday will be held accountable for that, but after nearly 20-some years, I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't hold your breath on that one, Bill. It's goofy.
We have another caller. You're on the air, and you're up next on KLIX. Pretty close, though. 736-0300. That's 736-0300. We should point out that if people are looking to reach you off the air, because I know sometimes people don't get through by the time we wrap up, they could probably just go to the website of the party and send you a message that way.
Yes, they could. And I don't check that as often as I should, but it's out there. So, I think one of the things we need to be really conscious of is, okay, where are we now? We have, and here's an interesting little question for you. We have Arizona and Utah and the Idaho Democrats, but Arizona and Utah have both Democrats and Republicans on the same day in those two states. And Idaho joined in from the Democrat side. The Republicans did not. I wonder if it wouldn't be worth consideration for the Idaho Republicans to think about setting up our GOP primary election date to correspond with Utah and Arizona. And that gives us kind of a little line there: Idaho, Utah, and Arizona.
Well, if you could throw in Montana and Wyoming, you could have a regional primary.
You could have a regional primary that would kind of encompass the Intermountain West states and make it a lot more interesting question. Idaho, kind of got buried on the 8th of March because Michigan had theirs. And I think I mentioned to you before, every time I turned on the television and watched the news report, we have primary elections coming up in Michigan. And I would stand up and say, wait a minute, there's also one in Idaho. Well, the night of the election, they finally did say, oh, yeah, we're going to have an election in Idaho also. So maybe we need to pick a time where we are a little bit more closely associated with regional efforts like Utah and Arizona and maybe a Montana or a Wyoming.
And do it early, though, because that way you bring the candidates in and they've got to come in. And
this fourth Tuesday in March is about right. Now, I know why Idaho did it on second Tuesday, because constitutionally we have an election scheduled for the second Tuesday of March to accommodate bond election overrides for school districts, for cities, for highway districts, for anybody who wants to have a bond election. That's the second Tuesday of March. So they just put the presidential primary in conjunction with that. So they had one election instead of having to have two in a month. So I know why they did it, but I kind of wonder if maybe we need to rethink that whole thing.
You could bring out lots of angry voters in certain counties to reject the plea for more money
to
pay for your mistakes when you did school renovations. We have another caller with us. You're up next. You're on the air with Steve Millington and Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Yes, hopefully I'm not angry today. Some days I am. Hey, a lighthearted story. I was up skiing at Pebble Creek by Pocatello, and they had a dummy jump. And they had Donald Trump, and what they did, they had a dummy screwed to a platform, and the platform was screwed to skis. They had Bernie Sanders, and I said, oh, this is going to be interesting. And the real long ramp, and then the jump was really quite high. And so they ran some things, and then they said, here comes Donald. Donald came down, and I thought, well, we'll see what happens. Maybe it's a sign. And he jumps off, goes over the jump perfectly, and lands perfectly. And I said, oh, my word, it's an omen. And then Bernie comes down the ramp. He scrapes the walls. He never even makes it to the jump. And they says, well, it's a wonder he made it that far. And it says, isn't that true? And I said, it's an omen. It's an omen. And I was shouting off. It was up there in Pocatello. You've got liberals that work for the university and fancy themselves as some enlightened liberal, but they've never ran a business in their life, and all they've ever done is work for somebody. So that's my comment, guys. Thank you.
Hey, that's interesting.
Great story.
And Pocatello has that's one of the strong beds of the Democrat Party in the state of Idaho, and that goes back.
You must have a lot of young people there.
Well, that goes back a long ways. Originally, Pocatello was one of the main switching points for the railroad system. And in those earlier days, in the 30s and 40s and 50s, that was heavily unionized activity, railroads and transportation and so forth. So you had an awful lot of union-type activity, union employees, workers in the area, and they, in those days, were prominently Democrat voters. And so that's just kind of carried on over in the Pocatello area.
If we have Ted Cruz, by the way, win today in both Utah and Arizona, we're going toward a brokered convention, aren't we?
We could. Trump is so far ahead in Arizona, I would be really surprised if Cruz caught him in Arizona. Now, I don't remember the delegate counts. It seems like to me that Trump was in the high 600s and Cruz was in the moderate 400s.
I saw in the last few days 2 sources that say that Trump will get to the 1237 that he needs.
Yeah.
But Reince Priebus, who's your national chairman, you got about 90 seconds? We'll get back to whatever else you wanted to mention in a moment, but well, go ahead. Share that story
Just
first.
remember that Bannock County is one of the big Democrat areas in the state of Idaho. So one of our callers said he had this interesting little experiment over there at Pebble Creek Ski Resort, and that's down close by Inkom and to the mountains to the east of Inkom there. And they have great nighttime skiing. But anyway, that's interesting. They would have that kind of something fun for the skiers to laugh at and participate in while they're up enjoying some recreation. What a clever idea.
And the Republican won.
Yeah.
This is Reince Priebus talking to Kelly, Megyn Kelly, on the Kelly File on Fox News Channel last night about the possibility of an open convention.
Well, I would never say must, but certainly I would probably state the obvious, that the closer you get to 1237, I would think that on the first or the second ballot, if you're really, really close, that it's obviously more likely. But, you know, one thing that I've said many times, I'm not going to help anyone get to 1237. I mean, even if it doesn't matter. I'm not going to help you get delegates. I'm not going to hurt you and prevent you from getting delegates, nor am I going to ascribe to the theory that the minority of delegates actually chooses the nominee for the majority.
I'm going to cut that off right there. Now, Debbie Wasserman Schultz claims she has been objective, but that's not true over on the other side. But Mr. Priebus has been sort of caught between a rock and a hard place.
Boy, has he ever.
And so I guess the question is, what's his role in all of this?
Well, basically, his role as chairman of the RNC, Republican National Committee, is to keep the National Committee on track and keep it functioning and operating. I go back to Pat Buchanan's statement of a couple of weeks ago that in his experience, never had he seen an organization where the leadership was so completely out of touch with the membership. And I'm sorry for Mr. Reince Priebus, but he is part of the leadership of that organization, and therefore he is the establishment.
He should then tell them to tamp it down, right?
Well, I don't think in this case he can tell them all he'd like to, but I don't think it's going to get a very solid reading from the people out on the street, because they have seen what's happened. The quote anger unquote, it's the wrong word, but the angst in the minds of everybody is just they are angry. How else can you put it? I talked with some friends of mine who are very well off financially, and they were, you know, wringing their hands and, oh, woe is us. How can we possibly have this Trump? And what do people see in him? And blah, 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 blah. These are good Republican people. I think they're good Republican people. They have indicated that. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And when the conversation was over, and my wife and I were apart from them so that would not reflect on the conversation, she said to me, that's interesting. What are we going to do? And I said, wait a minute. Those people live in a different strata economically than the majority of people in this country. And the people that Trump are relating to are those people who are having a difficult time, even if they're making relatively good wages. They're not in the same economic strata as John and Janie, and therefore, they don't. The really well-to-do people don't see the difficulties that the Joe average guy faces on the street. Of, you know, is my job going to be here tomorrow? And what if they hire some more illegals? And how do I get my kids educated? And those are real everyday stress points in our lives, and we're looking for somebody to help mitigate those things and get them out of our face. And so he is reaching a very strong demographic of voters in the country, and I'm sorry, but I think most of the Washington establishment and the Washington media group they're just not listening to the people on the street.
Got to point out tonight we start at 8:30, but we're going to have live coverage here on KLIX of the caucus, Democrats caucusing for president here in Idaho. Steve Millington may be here, but he may also be over at.
I think I'm going to start on over to CSI
and then flip back,
and then I'll come back over here. Now that thing, they're going to open the doors at 6. They're going to close the doors at 7. There'll be speakers for each candidate. So we'll have 3 speakers. There is a third candidate on the page. Shame on me. I can't even tell you what the guy's name is.
Can we find a socialist speaker
Oh,
in
yeah,
Twin Falls?
right. So we're going to have somebody give a speech for Hillary and somebody give a speech for Bernie, and then they're going to have a round of voting. And then they'll have a second round of voting, and the second round of voting will be determine which candidate are you really going to support.
We're down to a matter of seconds in this half hour, so we'll give this caller an opportunity at least to say something. You're on the air.
Hi there.
Yeah, good morning, guys. I'll try to be quick. I heard an advertisement this morning from Butch Otter about the concealed weapon permit. You know, he took an oath to uphold the Constitution, and it doesn't say shall not be infringed except when some hypocrite or some coward decides he doesn't like it.
You know, that's interesting, and you're spot on. It shall not be infringed, and from the very constitutional aspect, that means I shouldn't have to have a permit at all.
Boy, then the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday unanimously 8-0 came out in support of a Second Amendment issue with tasers. I'll tell you what, maybe some of those liberals on that court aren't so bad after all.
That's interesting. That would be 8-0. Great.
Well, look, we'll see you again
tonight.
Yep,
we'll be around here this evening talking about election results again.
So, folks, if you're looking to chat with us this evening, we'll be here starting at 8:30 this evening. Full complete coverage of Idaho's Democrat caucus for president, right here on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Fox News is straight ahead. Also, AIPAC, what is it? And yesterday, candidates were speaking there. We'll share some of the comments with you in the next hour.